AI is too much treated in isolation. It's almost like AI teams work in a separate room without rules. That's what we see a lot. So try to incorporate AI into your existing governance, your ISMS. Act as if AI is software, because AI is software. So it's just a software system that also comes with its challenges, of course, because it's software. But then you can include it in your security awareness, or your penetration testing, build on everything that's existing.
Welcome to the Elephant in AppSec, the podcast to explore, challenge, and boldly face the AppSec elephants in the room. I'm Alexandra, your host, joined by my amazing co-host Tristan, a former security engineer and co-founder of Escape. Today, we have an amazing guest, Rob van der Veer, joining us. Rob is an AI pioneer with 32 years of experience, specializing in engineering, security, and privacy. Currently, he is a senior principal expert at the software improvement group SIG, where he leads global thought leadership, advisory, and innovation in AI and software security. Rob is the lead author of the multiple AI standards like the ISO standard on the AI lifecycle. He's also a contributor to OWASP SAM Software Assurance Maturity Model, co-founder of OWASP's Digital Bridge for Security Standards, OpenCRE.org, and creator of the OWASP AI Exchange, an open source living publication for the worldwide exchange of AI security expertise. He's also a sought-after speaker at numerous global application security conferences and podcasts. Today, we'll be talking with Rob about how AI security has evolved since 1992, the challenges in developing secure AI systems, how to prioritize AI threats at different stages of the lifecycle, and the role of standards in AI security. Let's dive right in. Hi, Rob. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. It's our actually first in-person podcast, and in advance for a very special day for the Netherlands, for the King's Day. You can see a little bit of color. I don't have one, but you well prepared. So thank you a lot for finding the time to have a conversation with me, and especially you're very busy and a lot of projects going on at once. Also, in addition to your main work, you're involved in so many separate security projects like OpenCRE, CRE, or OWASP Security and Privacy Guide. And actually, when I was going through the guide, I ran different parts to understand better what you do, your work. And I think for those who don't know, the guide actually serves as guidelines how to address security and privacy for the AI, right? Yes. One of the missions, actually the main mission, you mentioned that you don't want to actually set the standard, but you want to drive the standard. So I guess to inspire others to create their own.
Yes.
Why did you decide to put that, as the mission?
I can understand why that may be surprising. But the thing is that the AI exchange is quite successful because we're setting out not to set the standard, but to be a place where everybody gets together to share their expertise. And I think that's where the power of OWASP is. It's a large community, but also these facilities with open source collaborations and setting up teams and having the Slack channel and all that access to the community is the strength. And if you then want to make a difference, if you set out to sort of compete with standards out there by standard organizations that are either governance organizations or international organizations like ISO, it's hard to get their collaboration because you're setting out to compete. Instead, we said, listen, we're going to collect all this expertise, put it together in a framework, an elegant framework, and we want to provide it to you without any copyright.
Okay.
And by doing so, the funny thing is that the AI exchange is, in the top bookmarks of people involved in AI and security. And at the same time, we're feeding into the international standards.
And how many people are involved right now?
So we have a group of about 35 experts right now working on it. Updating the exchange, doing research, but also spreading the word, being at conferences and etc. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of people. Like, how do you ensure that they collaborate well? Because it's should be hard, especially with everyone, I guess, remote in different countries. How do you make sure they actually work, and share well together?
Yeah. Yeah, this is important. Of course, we want to let people work on things that they love, that they are motivated to contribute to, and of course, that they have affinity for. And sometimes we get somebody to work on a topic that is very interested in a topic, but doesn't have all the expertise in the world. But because of the motivation, this person starts to do research, interview other people, collect all this information, validates it, and it can also lead to a great result. So it's a combination of affinity, expertise, and motivation for which we let everybody seek out their favorite subject and work on it. Also, what helps is letting them work in sub-teams. So just a couple of people put it together so they can have their synergy and they can remind each other that they are working on something because this is all volunteer work. So people are doing this on the side. And making sure that if you have a team that you get together and have separate team meetings, that's a great formula.
Okay, and you mentioned as well, like it would be difficult to collaborate with the standardization organizations before, like ISO. Do you still like feel that or a little bit?
No, we actually avoided that difficulty by setting us positioning us as not a standard but a standard resource, and providing all our material copyright, and also setting up relations with standard organizations, like regular meetings with NIST, with MITRE, with ETSI, with ITU, with NCSCs around the world, and also through ISO 27090 work group working on AI security. We're feeding the AI security, the AI exchange content into this standard. And we have set up a liaison between OWASP and Sensodelic, where we're working on harmonized security standards for AI for the AI Act. That's through that liaisonship, we're able to provide the exchange content to help these standards get there on time.
Okay, and do you think it's actually realistic that by 2025 the standard is going to be released?
Oh yeah, it's hard to take responsibility for it, but I think we've done all we can to make sure that we have the right tempo. And I'm positive about the chances that we have something quite useful when it's necessary.
Because the AI law is changing like from year over year, like 2023 was completely like a boom of the AI because of like OpenAI that came out, and then like so many technologies were created. So a lot of technologies, just the wrappers, of ChatGPT as well. So, but this is just within the last 2 years. But you've been in AI, I know, since 1992. Like, how did you see the evolution? You tell a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, the world definitely changed a lot regarding AI. When I started in 92, it was, you couldn't even say you were selling artificial intelligence because it would scare or confuse people. Now it's the other way around. You almost have to say,
that was cool.
That was cool. So I was in AI before it was cool. And of course, it wasn't pervasive. So the direct influence AI had on society and people was very limited. You had fraud detection, you had some video applications, but it wasn't used to authenticate people, for example. It wasn't used to, there were no voice assistants that were able to send emails to everybody in your contact list. So the impact that AI can have has really changed. It's become profound, which is why security has become more important. Back in the day, security was mostly focused around protecting the big data. So all the data that you collected, protecting that, doing smart things privacy-wise with privacy-enhancing technologies, those were all there. But also that field has progressed. So there's a lot more privacy-enhancing technologies right now. And of course, the rise of generative AI has changed a lot with the prompt injection and the cloud becoming a really important element. That was back in the day different. It was always your own computer, even if it was on the internet, it was your own computer because you just rented the rack space. Now we have this whole constellation of cloud services that make the attack surface more complex.
So, do you think right now it's one of the biggest challenges you would say of actually securing AI that's run on the cloud, or do you see any other what challenges?
Yeah, of course there are many challenges. The biggest threat with Gen AI, I mean security wise, is protecting the data that travels to it. I mean, you can say a lot about generative AI, it hallucinates, etc., but those are not per se security issues. I mean, they are interesting to take into account, but the security issues with Gen AI are mostly about protecting the data that goes into it. And it travels to the cloud, maybe into your virtual private cloud, but at some point needs to travel to a large language model that that needs to take your data unencrypted. That's an important thing to take into account. Or you run your own model, but then you have to make some sacrifice, although that sacrifice is slowly reducing in the quality of that model. But then you can run it on premise.
I think a lot of, let's say, old industrial organizations, they run everything on-prem, but the more companies using the cloud, right? And there are special startups, and I think that's the tough part as well. Like the younger companies that just get created, they don't know and don't think much about the security, but their technology, they say, they are developing this technology. And I think, how do you think you could potentially bring more knowledge, to those startups that just get started and maybe don't have, the dedicated person or sometimes the whole team in place to actually think about those issues?
Yeah, we've developed the AI exchange with this use case as a primary use case. Somebody who's building AI systems and wants to know how to protect them. Somebody not per se with a PhD in preserving machine learning. Somebody not per se with a lot of expertise in security, but making it easy for them to understand the threats and to understand the controls that you can apply and make them aware with clear examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would advise them, for example, to the first thing that they should do if they're developing AI system in-house, go check WASP AI exchange.
Yes, but I'm a bit biased, of course.
Of course. And bias aside, what would you recommend them to do?
So we offer sort of a learning program. We're working on that. So if they're really new to everything, just follow that learning program. It's just a list of references to interesting sources and courses, just to get acquainted, and then have a look at the threat model and do the risk analysis for their application to find out what threats are relevant to them and what controls. Because sometimes there's just a training set that is based on public data, so you don't have to protect it. So you have to do that risk analysis in order to make the problem small enough for you. And then you can go ahead and secure that AI system.
And depending on the technology, that the security approach, I guess it might be different. For example, like my best friend, she works to build a Siri, and she can't tell me most of the stuff because Apple is very protective. But it's yet, for example, voice. Do you think it requires different approach, or maybe not? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of a really specific architecture, and also illustrates that there are many types of architectures in AI. There's so with the voice assistant, there's this interpreter in the cloud, and the things that you say travel to the cloud. So the security of that is of importance, and there have been some news articles in the past that recordings were used to improve the model, which was with good intentions, but the people that were saying things into these assistants didn't know that. So that's a transparency issue, actually, and also a consent issue. So I think nowadays you need to provide opt in for sharing recordings of your voice to improve the voice assistant technology. That's the thing. And with this architecture, the voice assistant is linked with all kinds of functionality, which means that it can open your door or send an email or send a bunch of emails.
Or with Vision Pro, you can do almost everything.
Exactly. So it has a lot of power. And this is where the risk of excessive agency comes into play, which means that there's so much benefit in applying generative AI. It's so attractive to use it, or use voice recognition in this case, to control everything and link it to the real world. At the same time, you always need to think about what can go wrong. So what could go wrong is that accidentally or through a hack, a voice assistant sends a confidential message to everybody in your contact list. So you want to set some guardrails. Either ask the user, are you sure you want to do this, or don't do this at all. So put some limits, some boundaries, which are a nuisance to users. And I think the perverse effect of that is that vendors of these voice assistants, they want to make it really easy and they compete on that. So it's tempting for a vendor to not have these boundaries and to put the responsibility with the user. But I think that vendors of voice assistants and any AI need to take responsibility for the harm that this AI potentially can cause and protect the user against this.
And have you ever thought like about, for the 30 years, I think, almost 30 years of experience. Okay, this technology from the AI perspective is going to be very challenging to secure.
Well, machine learning in general, because of especially data poisoning risks, which are quite hard to detect. But a specific AI technology that's hard to protect. I think in that term more in larger categories like machine learning with its training data issues, and generative AI with its prompt injection issues and things like that.
But why this will have different types of listeners for the podcast? Can you tell us a bit more why data poisoning is challenging to detect?
Yeah, so data poisoning is an attacker putting things into data, into a training set, manipulating the behavior of a system. And you can put a lot of garbage in the training set if you can attack it, that database, and then the system will malfunction. That's sabotage. That's bad. But what you also can do is place a trigger in it, which means that you wouldn't normally, through tests, find out that the system is behaving bad in specific situations. And then the attacker can arrange for that specific situation, like, for example, a weapon system recognizing enemy vehicles. But if you put vehicles with yellow stickers on them in the data set and saying this is an enemy vehicle, and then in practice you're putting stickers on buses or cars of civilians, you are misleading the weapon system, and it could not be detected in tests because you test it with normal vehicles of all sorts, but in tests you don't put yellow stickers on it. So that is why data poisoning is such a scary threat.
Like, do you have an example of attack where, and actually like the impact in addition to that for real world?
Well, I think good example, data poisoning, you mean?
Yeah, because sometimes like we talk a lot about like data breaches and someone, let's say, getting access to data through brute force attacks, something like this. But I think when it comes to the AI, there are not so many news yet, at least that I haven't seen. Like, do you have an example of something that's should happen?
I think a good example of data poisoning is if you would put false facts on the internet.
Yeah.
And a generative AI would surf the internet and just take everything for granted.
Okay.
They can do some tests, but if you put false facts there, you can mislead a generative AI. You need to do it at scale. Yeah, you can also put code on the internet with a reference to some package that doesn't exist, and then make sure that when the generative AI starts to use that package and generated code, that you put a package out there which is malicious, and then it gets used.
I mean, there's so many data that's completely false out there on the internet. I think especially for different actually applications for before the elections, especially like political applications, which are kind of important. Then I think even technical information or like falsified information, and sometimes I think the attackers, especially like other even from other nations, actually create a lot of data sets like this to mislead potentially models, especially if you have to train them or like for I'm not sure, but I guess on your side, how do you actually current work at the SIG connects with all the work that you're doing for OWASP AI security guide?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually started the OWASP AI security and privacy guide in the exchange because we were working on AI security and privacy here at Software Improvement Group. We're helping clients with it, and we believe that if we share our insights with the rest of the world, we can position ourselves as an authority in this field, but also get the feedback from other experts and make those insights better, which is what we did. So our experiences and our threat model, we shared that with the OWASP AI exchange. We did that before with our AI engineering framework, and that became the ISO 5338 standard, about which we're really proud. It's actually based on the work that we've been doing here.
Okay.
So the work I'm doing with OWASP is a part of the thought leadership of Software Improvement Group, and I'm tasked with making that happen. Apart from, of course, doing innovation here, innovation projects, and working with clients. But when we work with clients, we benefit from the progression that our frameworks and insight have made by providing them as inputs to open source collaboration.
Okay, interesting. And what kind of clients? Usually there are other like the whole teams, or is it like usually the same dedicated person?
We work with large organizations around the world, enterprises, government organizations, typically hired by management.
Okay.
So we work a lot with developers, but we're working on big problems. And so it is about a portfolio that needs to be managed better, security that needs to be built in on a large scale, organizations that need to change because of that. That's how we help them. And we provide them with our platform and with our insights. And with AI, we see, of course, a strong increase in application. We see a lot is data scientists, AI engineers having trouble creating software that is future-proof, secure, preserving, but also maintainable, reliable, scalable. They're great at making a model work, but the problem is that the software they create is hard to transfer. Yeah. It's not well tested. It's not well documented, and that's a big problem. And that's our expertise. Software engineering is our expertise. So we help these organizations sort of professionalize their data science teams by providing them with a feedback loop on the quality of their work and helping them to provide software engineering best practices.
Okay. So in the bigger teams, well, it's actually like different people involved. And I worked in my previous company, for example, also developed like machine learning algorithm for the pricing, like data scientists, business people, also developers to implement that in structure. So how would you approach like each person? Because each person would listen, I guess, to a different type of message and would need to, be trained differently. Like how would you address each one of them?
Yes. A change like, for example, building security in requires a communication approach that is diverse indeed. So we're talking about, for example, AI literacy, for which you need to include everybody in an organization. We're talking about security professionals that need to take into account AI they need to be helped by providing them with, insight into the assets that they need to add to their repository, the risks. So then you speak their language. When you work with data scientists, you want them to understand the countermeasures that they can take to prevent attacks, and teach them how to apply software engineering best practices. And for software engineers, you want to teach them sort of a one-on-one on data science and on machine learning. Diversity in approaching these roles is important, because you cannot expect from a security professional to become proficient in adversarial machine learning and all those, mathematical aspects of it. It's good to explain them sort of the high level thing, but I wouldn't recommend a security professional to become a super data scientist. Also because these skill sets are almost orthogonal. The same goes for software engineers that don't have data science experience. Learn some things about data science, but not necessarily become a data scientist per se.
Yeah.
And the same for data scientists. So it's good to appreciate where everybody's coming from and take that into account on how you deal with them indeed.
Yeah, let's say organization, they decided to create their first AI-based model, right? So you have this development part, and then once the AI model is like released in the wild, it's or and basically the runtime. So you should. Do you think the approach how to secure AI in those two cases is different, and what steps and how?
Yeah, it's very different. Traditionally, we're used to focus on securing a runtime system. And we're not, spending a lot of effort traditionally on protecting the engineering environment, apart from the secrets that we store there, of course, and the intellectual property of the source code. But with AI, we suddenly have the data in the engineering environment, where it can be poisoned, where it can leak. So you suddenly need to have some segregation there. You need to separate the engineers working on the application software and the data scientists, and within the data scientist, even separate the people preparing the data and the people training the model. Because if you do, the people training the model can do a couple of checks and balances to see if maybe any data poisoning took place, etc. So that segregation, that's relatively new. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, where there's a lot of scrutiny in the engineering environment, but typically that's something new in the AI context.
Okay. I mean, the AI on itself, it's new. It's new because it's also like within the last years, it's just exponentially grew. That's why there was actually like the need now to secure. But I've seen also like a lot of AI security tools that come out. What do you think about them?
It's great. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's a need and people jump on it, especially testing tools. That's super. MLOps setup is professionalizing data science, basically.
Okay.
No, it's a great development.
Do you know any that you would think, wow, that's a great technology? The name?
No, I want to be so
Vendor agnostic.
I work for Software Improvement Group.
Yeah.
People can look up our platform, but we are an independent advisor to our clients, and the AI Exchange wants to be an independent open source resource. So if we put an overview of tools in there, there's no organization or preference mentioned there. It's for people to find out themselves.
Okay, so usually you do not advise any tools on yourself when you are approaching the client?
No, but we do present them with the facts around these tools so they can make up their mind.
Okay, so they're making the final decision. And,
yes.
And what are different criteria that you propose to them?
For tools?
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's open source and closed source. That's sometimes even a matter of taste for organizations and
over budget
and policy. I would say look at the potential of what these tools can accomplish, because many of them are just starting, and it's important to sort of assess the expertise that is present in, for example, a startup, and the promise that this startup holds, instead of what it can do right now, because these things are just, they're popping popping out all over the place.
Yeah.
So look at the promise, what the organizations can do and the expertise of what they're showing. This is, of course, requires some estimation. But that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it takes some time also to evaluate because there's always like a new tool that's coming out in place, and you don't know if it's actually the promise that they make is correct. Because a lot of people, at least I've seen that, when I talk with people, when you mention AI, they roll their eyes or.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, they know. They know. I think it depends on the person, to be honest, but yeah.
But because they're worried about it, or they.
I think it's just the popularization of ChatGPT. Everyone thinks now that AI, like not a lot of people think AI equal kind of OpenAI or the ChatGPT, which is not the case. But I think it's more because of the popular culture and how, actually what was distributed in the media and how people were talking about it. So there was a lot of like old suspicion a little bit
Yes.
around it. So that's why I think it's something, to see maybe in the future how it evolves. But yeah, we don't know yet, but it's going to be interesting. I think probably the next 5 years in terms of development of the AI probably is going to be more challenging than the past 10. Right? Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of interesting work for you. On that.
There is a lot of I'm having a lot of fun with it because we can, together with the AI Exchange team, where we can make a lot of difference. And here from Software Improvement Group, we can help take away some of that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but also inject some doubt in terms of understanding what can go wrong and anticipate that.
Yeah.
For example, with software engineering using AI, that provides great opportunity. And people are scared of a number of things, not rightfully, but scared of a number of things rightfully.
Yeah.
And the world hasn't found out a set of best practices that have been proven to work for this. So it's all very, very new. But what is clear is that there is an intrinsic limitation to the AI. I mean, it's super great and it's getting better and better. But until the next revolution, generative AI will hallucinate. It's just a part of the game, which means that the code it generates always needs to be checked, which means that you always need to have the ability to not just review, but also improve code. Meaning you need to maintain being able to have software engineering expertise. So my biggest worry is that if we turn ourselves into programmers that only review code, we'll lose the skill of actual coding. Yeah. And it requires a number of best practices that we're developing right now to make sure that engineers stay behind the helm, at the steering wheel of driving that sort of self-driving car, which is generative AI in the software engineering, in order to test everything that comes out of generative AI, but also to keep on building experience in software engineering.
And who do you think, in case of AI was attacked, who should be responsible for that? Do you think it's responsibility of CISO, of engineer, of data scientist, or?
Yeah, the responsibility arrangement is a complex thing because we talked about the complexity of the architectures. Maybe a vendor provides certain warranties, but at the same time, you need to look at the impact because warranty is always has some limitation.
Yeah.
And you can suffer much more damage. So you want to take some of that responsibility yourself. So it requires actually an analysis of your architecture and an analysis of the indemnifications and the possible liabilities involved. It becomes a bit of a puzzle, but you need to solve that puzzle for every situation in order to assign those responsibilities.
Okay, so you think for every organization and every case at hand, it's going to be different?
It's going to be different, but you need to clearly document and assign those responsibilities because they can be a surprise. And assigning them forces you to think about them. Oh, if we're using that vendor, we're using that vendor, maybe should look into that.
Okay. And should it be number first, like top priority to do that from the get-go, or?
Assigning those responsibilities, that's one of the first things, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, including creating an inventory of your AI initiatives, doing that continually, doing your checks and balances, setting up that AI governance, which includes assigning those responsibilities.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned governance, because I think this year specifically, like NIST 2.0, they introduced a new report govern, and everyone like thinks about that. Even like on previous episodes, we talked a little bit about it, and it's, what do you think about, especially with your standardization background, what do you think about like governing AI? Is it going to be challenging? Is it going to be easy?
So I like to think of governance as controlling the controlling. So it's high level thinking about what are we dealing with regarding regulation, ethics, business strategy, and aligning all those things into a policy. I mean, it sounds really boring, but things are so complex that you need to think about how you're going to arrange this, and then share that policy with the rest of the organization. Not put it on the wiki, but creating training and making things intrinsic. That is what governance is. And for AI, there's a nice standard for it. There's the 42001.
Okay.
Which help you set up AI governance. So having that inventory, assigning those responsibilities, and doing a continual assurance and impact analysis. Impact analysis is crazy important, because I've seen many AI ideas that clearly haven't been sort of evaluated from the beginning, and that require reevaluation because of the wrong purpose, actually sometimes even illegal purposes, repurposing of data, inherent unwanted bias. Those are things that you need to think about, preferably before you start an AI initiative, and that's also part of governance.
Interesting. Usually on the podcast, I always ask, for newbies in the security, what would be like 3 steps or maybe 3 to 5 steps that you would recommend them to learn about the AI security. So let's say it can be someone who's just, starting their own startup, or it can be someone, a more mature organization, security person, but who just getting started, and actually their organization just thinks, okay, now let's develop an AI model. What would be the steps, concrete steps that you would recommend them to learn to do?
Yes. First of all, think before you start.
Okay.
I just mentioned a number of things that need to be considered for every AI initiative. That's important. Second, build on what you already have. AI is too much treated in isolation. It's almost like AI teams work in a separate room without rules. That's what we see a lot. So try to incorporate AI into your existing governance, your ISMS, and act as if AI is software, because AI is software. So it's just a software system that also comes with its challenges, of course, because it's software. But then you can include it in your security awareness or your penetration testing, build on everything that's existing. And the third thing is be aware of your primary scope, because it's quite easy as a professional to go into all kinds of rabbit holes. Responsible AI, trustworthy, transparency, ethics, security, accuracy. Everything is interesting. You can read a lot about it, but as a professional, you have a certain responsibility. If you start there, so if your responsibility is to secure a system, focus on that. And of course, it's interesting for you to understand AI ethics, because you can then identify issues and then approach the person who's responsible for it I think that's important to have, but don't be distracted by too much. Focus on your scope, what you need to fix, and don't have the ambition as a security professional to suddenly become a data scientist. So that whole enthusiasm for AI is understandable, but first get the basics in order, and then you can go down these rabbit holes.
Okay. And you mentioned as well, like several times, AI hallucinating. Did you have personal experience when using it?
Hallucinations,
Yeah.
yes. So with OpenCRE, we built a chatbot.
Okay.
And because OpenCRE has all these security standards, and that allows us to let people ask questions about them. So we have this large language model, and people can ask, how often should I threat model in an agile team?
Yeah, can you tell a little bit to the listeners what OpenCRE does?
Okay, so OpenCRE is something that we created 4 years ago, and it's a website, opencre.org, that integrates all security standards into one resource, building bridges between existing standards, allowing people to look at a topic like session management or session token generation, and then for that topic, see everything that NIST wrote about it, ISO wrote about it, the cheat sheets, testing guides, tool rules, everything that you need, depending on your role, into one resource. And because we have the text of all these standards, we have the ability to put it into a large language model. We have hallucinations there. So we warn our users for it, but sometimes people keep being surprised because a lot of the output of such a large language model is very great and reliable, or looks great, but then suddenly you see something that it made up.
Do you have a funny example? Or maybe a memorable example?
Yes,
I don't know if it's funny.
So we tried their OpenCRE chat. What is service request frauding? Just a made up attack. And then it started a whole story about this non-existing attack. So if you ask a large language model about the boundaries of its knowledge, it tries to guess a lot of things, but it tries to guess things that don't exist. So we even got example code on how to apply this attack.
Okay.
Quite amazing.
Have you tried it?
No, it doesn't work. It's bollocks.
It's interesting. I think we're gonna come across more and more examples like this in the security, and I think we've tried it as well at the Escape, but that was ChatGPT actually, and it produced an example of code that actually will know how to defend vulnerability, but that did not.
At that moment, it comes across as really stupid.
Yeah.
But at other moments, it comes across as really brilliant, and it's important to benefit from that and not be demotivated by those stupid moments.
Yeah.
And at the same time, be aware that what can come out of it can have errors. It's a different type of error that we're used to. People make different types of errors, so it's hard for us to detect them sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I think for actually understanding the human logic and the logic that humans put behind the business or behind the algorithm is a very tough thing. Probably, and understanding after it how to secure it as well. It's probably one of the toughest challenges, for sure. And do you know any interesting piece of security research on the AI security topic that's going on, or that you could recommend?
I find the research on the ability of Gen AI to review code very interesting. Because it shows us that reviewing code is actually more difficult than writing code, which means that if generative AI creates code, we need something else to review it, a human. And this is why this review research is, I think, important work. I don't think it is a winning model to have generative AI review generative AI output, because if that reviewing Gen AI would be able to catch the issues, you would have wanted that to create the code. So it's sort of a paradox. So the human needs to be in the loop. to do the verification. Humans aren't perfect, and there's all kinds of tools that can help them, including Gen AI, for example, to help understand a piece of code. That's a very helpful application, or summarize something, or pinpoint something. So together with Gen AI as a sort of an assistant, that review can be very successful.
Okay. And there's always also a question that I ask on the podcast. If you would recommend one book to someone to read about the topic, what would it be?
Yeah, about this topic. Well, about security, I really love Click Here to Kill Everybody by Bruce Schneier. I love that book.
What's it about?
Oh, it's about security and the things that can go wrong in the Bruce Schneier way. So it's just
Bruce Schneier way.
So Bruce is, I think, he's my hero. He's my visionary. He, just by illustrating what can go wrong and in what way, he sort of opens up your eyes. Okay, never thought about that. That's a good point. So he creates a lot of awareness, even for seasoned security professionals.
Okay, what was the moment when you thought, oh, never thought about that?
I don't have a specific example right now, but the ease in which an attacker can set up a man-in-the-middle attack, for example, that you didn't think of that could happen, but is actually much easier than you thought.
Okay, interesting. And do you evaluate, every situation from from the security perspective that after so many years in security, that you actually embed, security into your private life as well?
That's a good point. Yeah, I switch off voice assistants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I confess that I have some water and some food to survive a couple of weeks without electricity or being able to use the roads.
Okay, so it's a threat modeling to the core.
Yes, that started, I think, 8 years ago when I heard Klaus Gusawe talk about the possibilities of hacking the electricity network, and that was so real to me that I decided, okay, I need to get some stuff to survive a couple of weeks. But I stopped at the crossbows to defend my family, because that's where everybody draws their line somewhere. So that's an effect of sort of risk appetite and security understanding on my personal life.
Oh yeah, that's impressive. I don't have this kind of reflection.
I recommend it.
I mean, in Paris, for example, it's also quite hard to have the supplies and for actual storage space for anything, because everything is super small. But I think that there are different, I would say, threat modeling situations that you might think of at least when you was like in a very small apartment.
Yeah, but to be clear, I'm not a doomsday prepper. Maybe I seem like one. Just some precautions. There's an attack scenario where there's no electricity for a couple of weeks, and then shops close, and then maybe the government closes the roads. Who knows? So what are you going to do? And just sit through it.
Or see if the day happens.
Maybe I'll have the last laugh. But,
yeah. I mean, for sure, I think it maybe come with like global warming and everything to do with the climate. Sooner than ever, we'll never know. Thank you so much, Veer, for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure talking with you, despite some situations, situations that we had while recording. But thank you so much for sharing your views and vision, and I hope our listeners could learn, because I've learned a lot about the approach to your security and how to manage it within its whole life cycle, and how it fits within the stabilization as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was lovely to do this in person. Yeah. Enjoy Key Stage tomorrow.
Yes. Well, hope not too much, but